Today, guys, I have a very interesting case in front of me. It's a bit of an old one, but I had the pleasure of actually completely disassembling a system inside of it, giving it a nice deep clean, and it reminded me of a very different time in PC building. Today, we've got an H440 by NZXT and Razer. Yes, this is a Razer collab case that honestly was my dream case for a long time back in my early PC building days. So let's actually talk about it and how it is still one of the best cases I think I've ever used. Hello and welcome. My name is Wolfie and you are watching GreaterThanPie. So the H440, this case actually has its DNA in current NZXT cases. For example, the H500, H400 are, well, derivatives of this existing case. This case came out right before the closed front panel trend truly kicked off. It was very innovative for having its closed off, silence focused design. That being said, there was actually a more popular case, the S440 or 340. There was a more popular version of this case in existence, but this one in particular was the full tower, big-ish size case. Now that being said, this was marketed as a mid-tower, but it still has a lot of full tower features. On the inside, we actually have a motherboard tray spacing that is appropriate for ATX. And well, that's about it. You're going to use ATX or micro ATX in here. Do not try eATX. You do not have enough space due to how it has an angled grommet system. This actually has made a very big return, just angling in the opposite direction with things like the Lee & 011 dynamic line. For power supply support, it pretty much could accept any power supply of any length with absolutely no conflict whatsoever. This is a feature that is sorely missing on even modern cases, which is a feature that even the Corsair case that I just built in was unfortunately lacking. In that case, you would either have to remove the hard drive cages outright or move them forward to their furthest most position. And with some power supplies, you would still run into issues. This case, fortunately, does not have that problem. It is fully designed to install a power supply as long as you could possibly need it. And with even my 1000-watt power supply being not long enough to fill up this chamber, I can confidently say that you could put just about any power supply unit in here and it would still work. Speaking of hard drives, this thing can hold up to 5 hard drives and 2 SSDs. Now the SSD enclosure area is actually right in the front underneath the motherboard tray, and the hard drives are actually stored in a very traditional tower setup, which is along where the drive bays used to be. Now this case was interesting because it didn't actually have any drive bays. It went for a completely clean front as opposed to many of the other cases that came out around this time. This was seen as a bit adventurous at the time, and now look at it, there's no cases with that feature. There's no 5 1/4 bays anymore at all, so I guess NZXT really was kind of ahead here. Unfortunately, though, that does mean that some larger GPUs may not actually fit in this case. Regardless, though, this case does have a very forward-thinking focus on radiator support. I actually tested it. You could fit a 360 in both the front and the top simultaneously, which a lot of cases struggle with even today. Unfortunately, you would have to sacrifice your drive bays, but I mean, most of us would use these SSD mounts right in the front and not worry about it. Cable management in this case is also very interesting because it's not bad, especially not for the time. And there are some compromises that are still being made today when it comes to cable management. Fortunately, it has space for your PCIe cables, it has space for your ATX cables, and it actually has an impressive amount of room for installing your EPS cables. And of course, SATA and data cables have plenty of room to come in through the bottom here. One of the unique things about this case was this was branded to be a Razer case. And because of that, it actually had a very interesting gimmick to it. This case actually featured green LEDs on the front emblem, on the power supply shroud, and had an underglow that was also green to match with Razer. Furthermore, the power button and the hard drive LED also were color matched to Razer Green, and the USB ports on the top for the 3.0 speed, or the 2.0 speed, were actually done in green as well, making this the easiest case to match with your Razer Black Widow back in 2015, I think it was. Additional notable features of this case that were actually really cool was it had full support for external water cooling, which fortunately meant that you could go full water cooling even if you used hard drives, but that feature was on its way out to begin with. Now, unlike most cases, it actually came with the grommets in there by default, and that was to just straight up pass through cables instead of having to use a pass-through port. Now, when it comes to building in this case, it actually is incredibly easy. As mentioned, there's plenty of room for cable management, but even without a power supply in here, I can enjoy the niceties of being able to remove fans without having to jam my hand into weird places. Every panel of this case comes off to reveal a pretty open frame. There are standard mounting for up to 3 120mm fans in every position and up to 2 140mm fans in both the front top positions. The rear also supports a 140mm fan. By default, it came with 3 120mm fans and 1 140mm fans with a fan controller to appropriately control them. Those were old-fashioned DC 3-pins. Now, there are some downsides to this case. One is a lot of plastic pieces and a lot of mixed materials. There's some steel, there's some aluminum, there's some soft touch metal and metal finish. There's this plastic up here, which is like a piano finish. There's a lot on this case that got dinged up over the years. You can actually see in some of this B-roll that this case is just not in the best shape anymore. And it's entirely because of the materials themselves in the case. But the angling of the case and the shaping of the case was very forward-thinking for its time. Unfortunately, this trend has come and gone with having more airflow being way more important than having these closed-off designs. But it did have some thought put into it. For example, even though there's only ventilation on the sides and this top piece, the rest of it is actually curved inward, and that curve extends into the actual case itself, meaning that any air that were possibly being bounced off this back wall would actually have a natural and gradual way to move into the case. Unfortunately, this is still not preferable to having mesh or even just being plain open. This case is a hot box. So in ways, it was very behind the times and ahead of the times at the same time. Because this would be the dominant trend that would, well, be predominant up until around 2020, I would say. And outside of that, we've started to focus back on airflow and actually cooling our components, well, properly. Aside from that, a lot of its features are actually still very relevant and very modern. Having the 360mm on top and in front is, well, as I said, better than most cases. And it's not that big. It is not the largest case I've worked in recently, and it is definitely not that heavy. I would say that's probably because of how much plastic is on this case. The saddest part about this case, though, is that NZXT doesn't make them like this anymore. You see, the H series, while it is great, it is easily the most popular case line ever created, especially for NZXT. It's kind of sad to see how they digressed a little bit. This case has so many features, so many things. Like the radiator mounting situation in this case is so much better than it is in any of the H series cases. The default openness of this case was also an absolute pleasure to work in. And unfortunately, the last case that I did with NZXT was an H500, I think it was. Just those features just don't seem to be there anymore. But as we know, the H500 is actually a tiny case, and this is closer to the size of an H700. That's because NZXT used to make huge cases, like absolutely massive cases. The NZXT Phantom was another one of my favorite cases. It was a high airflow focused case. Again, lots of plastic, but it was massive and easy to work in. And in that era, came this, which changed the shape of that company, the direction that they went. And then this collab came out and that had Razer on it. And it was just an interesting point in PC building history. The insanely crazy gaming PC took a very different approach towards a more minimalistic design. And that minimalistic design prevailed for several years afterward, outliving this case and outliving any of the components that would have been used in this case. It's weird. I'm kind of happy that I got to experience this thing again. It really puts a lot into perspective when it comes to PC building. A lot that we take for granted, actually, to be completely honest. But I'm going to build it again. I'm going to build a modern system in this case. Not only am I going to build a modern system, I'm going to water cool it. Hardline water cooling. And it's going to look phenomenal. But I'm going to have to refinish this case. There's like just so much small damage. I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to have to do a lot of touch-up work, probably covering up most of this damage, to be honest. I'm thinking I can vinyl wrap these surfaces, and I think full water cooling. 360 in the front, 360 up top. We'll leave airflow in the back, and we'll go and make a full-on Razer PC. Razer motherboard. We're going to do green coolant. We're going to color match everything to green, and it's just going to look amazing. But that's going to be a while from now. That's not going to happen tomorrow. No, this is going to be after I've got at least 2 other builds lined up first that I'm getting together. So after that, after all of that is done, that's when we're going to do this one. It might take some time, but I'm looking forward to building in this case again because it just has so much potential. And I can't wait to build a modern system in it. But that's where we're going to end today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, you can consider giving it a like, maybe commenting, subscribing. I do content like this all the time on this channel. And if you want to see another retro case that I took a look at, here's actually the half air. I still have to do a build in that one, but I'm missing a key component that I'm trying to find a way to source. I'm missing the power supply shroud, the power supply holder. The person who owned that case prior may still have it. I'm going to try to reach out to them and see if I can get it, but that one's been on hold because I literally can't build. I just can't build in that case right now. But other than that, you know, that's a cool case to take a look at, and also would be a really cool one to build in. That one's still in production. You might even still be able to find some of these old H440s lying around. I mean, they're in PC Builder Simulator, even if you wanted to take a look at it there. But yeah, that's where I'm ending it. Thank you guys again. Wolfie, out.